So welcome to today's webinar. We're going to focus on using deliberate practice for distance remote training. I'm Tony Rubinier, joined by my colleague Alexandre Vaz. As we're going on, even while I'm in the middle of talking, feel free to type your questions into the chat window. And Alex might respond right then as you type your question, or we might answer it later on. So we will have lots of time for Q&A later on as well. But we really want to privilege your questions. So today's focus is going to be on practical resources for using deliberate practice for distance remote supervision training. We're going to have a demo and then some discussion and Q&A. We're not going to go deep into the theory of deliberate practice, the research underneath all that, just because there isn't time today. However, we do have recorded webinars and lectures and other resources on our website, which has a deeper dive into the theory, into the research, so on and so forth. So we recommend you go to our website if you want to get deeper into that. And also today's webinar will be recorded and posted on YouTube and all over the place. So just keep that in mind. Great. Alex, can you see the new page now?
I can. It looks lovely, Tony.
Great. Thank you. Great. So a few years ago, I published a book with a colleague where we did a literature review where we reviewed 63 different studies, peer-reviewed studies on distance/remote supervision and training. And I'm not going to go into the details of it all, but the overall finding, the aggregate finding, is that it can be effective. So this is good news. This means that we can achieve our goals. And I'm happy to email you more information about this if you want a deeper dive into the research. However, there has also been research that suggests that passive learning is less effective for skill acquisition. And by passive learning, I mean kind of like what we're doing right now, where there's just a professor kind of yakking away and people are taking notes and that kind of thing. Or reading books counts as passive learning, or watching videos. In contrast, experiential training has been shown to be highly effective for skill acquisition. Now, one form of experiential training that's been explored recently is deliberate practice, which is gaining in popularity very quickly and is becoming widely recommended as a method of experiential training. And this is where we're going to focus today, is how can you, as supervisors, professors, include deliberate practice in your distance training. What we're going to show you are practical exercises that focus on your trainees' immediate needs. So deliberate practice works best if the trainees are highly motivated to engage in it, right? So we've created exercises to focus on two immediate needs of trainees. First, rehearsing common therapeutic challenges that occur just in regular therapy. And second, common challenges providing teletherapy during the COVID-19 crisis that we're all living through. Now, the exercises are appropriate for all training levels, and they focus on therapy skills that are called common factor skills, which means they should apply across all major therapy models. Instructions for the exercises are provided on the website. We're going to show you where. And the exercises use actors playing clients, which means there's no confidential information, there's no privacy, issues you have to deal with, no HIPAA for people in the United States, that kind of thing. And they're also free to use. All right, let's dive in. And I am now going to share the website. So this is our website, dbfortherapists.com. And if you go to this section right here, videos, this is the page with the video exercises. Now, if you'll notice at the top here are two forms. These are forms that your trainees will use as part of the exercises. There's a reaction form and a diary form, and I'll get into those a little later, but you're going to want to ask your trainees to download those forms or print them. Now, on the rest of the page are a series of about a dozen deliberate practice exercises. These are all actors portraying common challenges in therapy or COVID-related challenges in teletherapy. Let's see. Fabio asks, "Can I use your exercises?" Oh, great, Alexandra, you're answering that. Excellent, thank you.
So that's a very eloquent and comprehensive answer.
Yeah, we could talk about that more later on if you want, Fabio. It's a great question. So let's go to the first one. And what you do is you click here for the video and exercise instructions. Now, what you've got here is a video prompt we're going to watch, and instructions for 3 different exercises that go with this prompt. Now, each exercise focuses on a different therapeutic skill. There's goal setting, repairing alliance ruptures, and empathic understanding. All right, well, why don't we do the empathic understanding one? So we'll click on the instructions, and then it takes you to a PDF. Now, your trainees can read the PDF online. They can also download it and print it however you want. And you're welcome to use these however you want, distribute them however you want. Now, if you look at the instructions here, the first step is to watch the video prompt. And at the end of the prompt, the trainee is going to try improvising a response using the skill criteria below. Now, these are the skill criteria down here.
Maybe you can zoom in just a little, Tony?
Yes. Whoa, that was a lot.
There you go.
There we go. So, step 2, they're supposed to improvise a response following the skill criteria. Now, this exercise is on empathic understanding. And so the skill criteria are to first, the therapist accurately captures and reflects back the core meaning or feeling behind the client's statements. And then 2, the therapist uses a tentative exploratory tone. So that's what the trainee is trying to achieve in their response. Now, we emphasize that the trainee should try actually saying their response out loud to the video. This is going to feel a little weird. And trainees will often be tempted just to say it in their head or maybe write it down. And we don't count that as deliberate practice. We want to actually rehearse the behavior that the trainee will be using with their real client. So to say it out loud. There's a lot of therapy that's not just picking words, but like, how do you say them? What's your tone of voice? What's your pacing? What's your intonation? That kind of thing. So we want trainees to experiment with all that.
And shockingly enough, things in our head usually sound more eloquent than when we actually try to say them.
Yes. Even more so, when I write down my therapy, it looks really good. But when you hear me say it, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, we're all geniuses behind the keyboard, right?
So this is important to say things, even though it's going to feel a little strange. Now, the next step is to use the deliberate practice reaction form, which is on the next page. And we're going to use that to assess difficulty and then adjust it. And so let's go to that form that's here. And this asks trainees how challenging did the exercise feel? And then did they have any reactions in the good challenge or the too hard categories? Now, it's particularly important with trainees that trainees are told that they do not have to disclose their individual reactions to the professor or supervisor. All right, we want to protect trainees' boundaries. Okay, the goal is for the trainee to develop some self-reflective skills, some self-awareness, but they do not have to disclose everything to you in order to do that. All right? Because often trainees may feel some shame, especially if there's any of the 2 hard categories. All right, so we're just trying to normalize this. And then once they do that, they move to the next page, which is how to adjust the difficulty based on the reaction form. And Alex will guide you through this when we do the demo. So I won't explain it all. We'll let Alex do that. So that's step 3. And then for step 4, we want them to repeat it. 10, 15 minutes, maybe even more. Now, this is different than traditional therapy training. Traditionally, people might try something once or twice or whatever and then move on. With deliberate practice, we want to really dig into it and try it a whole bunch of times. This gives trainees the opportunity to try 30 different responses, 30 different ways of expressing empathy. You know, and maybe half of them will bomb, half of them won't work. I mean, that's great. This is giving trainees the opportunity to really stretch, to explore, to play, to experiment, to really find their voice. So they're going to feel more confident when they're sitting with their client. Great. So why don't we exit out of here and whoops, here it is. Alex, should we go ahead and do the demo now?
Sounds great. I'm just answering here. Yeah, Fabio. So if you go to the website on the videos, there's a sub tab called Inner Skills, and there's a whole YouTube series with it just focused on. There you go, Inner Skills videos. Those videos are just focused on what you're asking.
Yeah, great question.
We got you covered.
Great question. Yeah, the skills on this page that we're talking about are what we'd call quote unquote interpersonal skills, which are kind of more basic. They're really appropriate for like totally beginning trainees. The intrapersonal skills are definitely valuable, but totally new trainees might be a little like, well, why, you know, I don't know why I'm doing this. What I really want to know is what do I say to the client, right? So we typically start with the interpersonal and then move to the intrapersonal.
Trust us, we've tried it and we've seen the panicked faces of why are we focusing on this? Okay, so skill, wonderful. So good folks joining us. Again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to suggest that we're actually going to try together to do it, to do an exercise, right? So as Tony was saying, we have a video here of a client. This is a specific client that's portraying a teletherapy stimuli, a COVID-related teletherapy stimuli. And what you're going to do is actually immerse yourself in the video because the video is front-facing, as all of the videos are front-facing the client. So you're actually going to immerse yourself in the video as if you're right now in front of this client in therapy with them, okay? So each video presents a different common challenging clinical scenario. So we're going to watch the video and we're going to try out, for example, one of the free exercises. We can try out the empathic understanding one. Now for each of the videos, we laid out different exercises that are hopefully congruent with that specific video. So that means that for a different video on our list, you might see 3 different exercises that are not the ones listed here for this exercise here. So let's try the empathic understanding one. So if we go back, Tony, can you bring us back, sorry, to the skill criteria, just to refresh? So at the end of the video, what I'm going to ask you guys is that we actually say back to the video as if the client is in front of us right now, try to capture and reflect back the core meaning or feeling behind what the client just said. And try to do it in an exploratory, non-authoritarian, tentative tone, okay? Again, actually try saying it. Don't just think about it. Talk to the screen like a madman, okay, or woman, all right? And then we'll do difficulty assessment adjustment. Okay, so Tony, if you could bring us to the video.
I know that before this whole COVID thing happened, we were working on my relationship with my parents. But honestly, now that I'm stuck at home and I'm not even seeing anyone anymore, I just don't feel that focusing on that makes any sense anymore. It's like all we were working on before has to be put on hold. I just don't see the point of digging deep into my emotions when all this other stuff is happening right now. And stuff that has such a bigger impact in my life right now.
Okay, so try
Great.
talking back now. All right. So someone is saying mic is off. I was actually also doing it with you. So I turned my mic off as I was actually practicing as well. Always a good opportunity, free practice. So Tony, can you now bring us to the reaction form?
Yes.
Okay, so now you did a round of trying to do this, right? I'm gonna ask whoever is comfortable, of course, that you now actually do the reaction form with us. So could you write from 1 to 10, how challenging did it feel to give a fluent response that met those two criteria? To reflect back the core meaning or feeling in a tentative way. So from 1 to 10, how hard did it feel to do that? You can write in the chat if you want. Yeah. Now we see, interestingly enough, a lot of times variability in this. For some people it will be quite hard, for others it will be quite easy, and that's normal. Mm-hmm. Great. All right, so we already got some responses, right? So empathic understanding, you can say it's a basic, almost counseling skill, but you know, given a certain context, it might be somewhat easy, and we're seeing actually it's pretty congruent here, the answers. It's funny because we did the same webinar yesterday with a different exercise, not the empathic understanding one, and the assessments were much more widespread. I think it was the goal setting, right, Tony?
Yeah, that one's
And
harder.
that one's harder, and you could see it going, like, some people found it easy, some people found it quite hard. Okay, so here's the important thing. Maybe a lot of you or most of you have heard of the term zone of proximal development. So deliberate practice is only really effective if we can stay as much time as possible rehearsing in that challenging but not overwhelming range. Okay, so this is really important. If you're practicing something that feels too easy, you're probably not going to learn so much. If you're practicing something that feels too hard, you're probably not going to learn so much. Okay. Now that's why doing continual difficulty assessment and adjustment is really important. Okay. So for example, a lot of people said a 5. A 5 is at this kind of middle level where it's a good challenge. It could be much harder. It could be easier, right? What probably that would mean is that you could repeat the exercise, the same exercise, to see if you could make it easier, but you're not hugely struggling with it, right? Some people will find that some exercise will be too easy, and you don't want to waste time on that usually. And markers for that, for some exercise being too easy, is either you get bored doing it because you know that you can do it, or worse yet, you feel great and have a wonderful mastery experience because, oh wow, I can do this. And that feels good, you know, it feels nice, have a mastery experience, but you probably aren't learning that much. It's not really effective practice, right? So you want to make sure that you try to always tailor back to this challenging but not overwhelming range. And by the way, this is, I think, why also deliberate practice as a method is very unshaming, in the sense that if something is too hard, we don't call that like a deficiency of the trainee, like what's wrong with you, go do your own therapy. It's just a healthy, valid sign that that specific exercise right now is too hard for this specific trainee. So it's our task as a teacher or supervisor to tailor the exercise to make it challenging but not overwhelming. Okay, this is the real principle. So, okay, so now we did the assessment, right? And now, Tony, if you could slide down. So now we go to adjustment. So based on this, if you said that it was like between a 4 to a 7, it's a good challenge, we would invite you to just repeat the exact same exercise with the exact same stimuli or prompt. If you would have said that the exercise was too hard, like a 8, 9, or 10 in difficulty, we would suggest that you tailor the exercise to make it challenging but not overwhelming. And that could be done by focusing on just one of the skill criteria, or planning out what you're going to say beforehand, like thinking about or even writing down your intervention and then actually saying it, or try out a different exercise or a different stimuli, right? So that would be tailoring it down. Let's imagine that you said it was too easy. It's a 2, for example, out of 1 to 10. Then you want to make the exercise harder. And you can do that by adding an extra layer of complexity to the exercise. For example, you could have a new criteria at the end, besides the empathic understanding, where you have to self-disclose your feelings about what the client is saying. So making the exercise harder by putting an extra weight, let's say, in terms of weightlifting, you're adding 20 kilos by doing yet another criteria in. Or just change the video or even the exercise to find something that's challenging for you. So this is the common principle of all good practice, not just in psychotherapy, is finding something that's consistently challenging and not overwhelming. And sometimes you won't get it at first, and that's totally fine. It's just a marker that we have to switch things up to make it challenging for you personally. And I think that's all I wanted to say, Tony.
Great.
Anything you want to add to that?
Great. No, that was great. Here, let's go back to the video prompt. So I think what we'd like to do is we're probably going to do another demo, but first, let's open it up to your questions and comments. I know Fabio had a great question here. How do I know if I've provided good empathy? In other words, how do I know if I did the exercise right? Perfectionism trigger. Yeah. Anyone else here ever get some perfectionism around therapeutic skills? So ultimately the only way you will really know is when you try it with a client and see how the client responds. And of course, it's different for every client. So, this is an improvisational art we are trying to learn and trying to teach. And so it's going to be different client to client, even session to session. So the goal is to kind of try to expand your range. So instead of aiming for kind of one perfect thing, try like 30 different ways of saying it, right? Try 30 different tones of voice, different pacing, different kinds of eye contact, like all that. And so you're just really building your range and you're finding out what feels right for you. It's got to feel right for you and it's got to feel right for the client, like both. And that, I remember when I became a therapist, one of my professors said like, oh, it takes 10 years to discover your therapeutic, style. And I was like, that's horrible. You're telling me I got to wait 10 years before I can actually like be good at this? Like, that's like the last thing I want to hear. The idea of deliberate practice is you don't have to like subject clients to 10 years of, before you figure out your style, that you can rehearse a bunch first and figure things out before you're sitting with clients.
Another, just to add to what you're saying, Tony, I think also a good metaphor might be studying for jazz improvisation or jazz music, because in jazz there's a lot of improvisation, but improvisation, as some of you might know, is not just random notes. It actually has a bedrock and people actually having practiced scales before, right? And practicing modes and just actually having a deep muscle memory in a lot of different exercises before. So if you do those scales, which is what we're doing here, chances are when you get into the improvisational piece, which is the actual fluidity of the session, you're coming with a different bedrock, having tried out a bunch of different things, right? It's much different than just saying to a beginning jazz musician, okay, now just improvise. You've never touched on any scale, any theory, any nothing. Now improvise with your colleagues. They can
Yeah.
do it, but yeah, go ahead, Tony.
And this is something to really emphasize with the trainees, because, you know, in training, we use the term competency a lot, right? Where we want trainees to show competency. And I'm a big fan of competency, you know, especially when I, you know, am competent myself. But the problem is trainees can get the message that there's one right way to do something and they got to figure out what that is, right? And that's just not the case for psychotherapy. So really let them know the goal is for them to flesh things out. Now, something that is not included on our website is a way for you to review what the trainees are doing, right? There are other programs that permit that, most notably TheraView, which is listed at the end of the slides that we sent around. There's a lot more information on the slides than we have time to go over here. We just included it in case you're curious to read it. We don't have that on our website because it ends up being a whole bunch of issues involved, and we just wanted something that's very accessible. Though something you can ask your trainees to do is to use their phones to record video of their responses. And then they can share those videos with you, and then you can let them know how you think they did, right? So you can give some personalized feedback that way.
So for those reasons, I imagine it's why you don't.
Yeah, so Fabio says, for those reasons, I imagine it's why you don't offer your, Tony and Alex's way of responding. Correct. We do not provide kind of model demonstrations because, you know, the empathy is so personal. All these things are so personal, and we're really trying to encourage everyone discovering their own style. Yeah, so exactly right, Fabio. Any other questions or comments before we dive into the next demo? All right, should we do it, Alex?
Let's roll.
Okay, so let's do the flirty woman again.
Wonderful.
This is one that, so let's go to the instructions here. And this exercise is on setting boundaries. Now, the skill criteria here is going to be for the trainee to, 1, express empathic understanding with the client, and then 2, clarify appropriate therapy boundaries in a respectful manner. All right, that's what we're going to ask you to do. So let's watch the video.
I want you to know that you've been very helpful to me. We have only been meeting for a few weeks, and you've helped me way more than my previous therapists. How do you understand me so well? It's like you can read my mind. You're very insightful. What I'm thinking about right now. It's a shame that I met you as my therapist, because you're the kind of person I've been looking for as a partner. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like if we were together. The other night I hooked up with a girl I met at a bar. And when we were together, I thought about you. I hope you don't judge me for thinking about you. And I know you have to be professional, but sometimes I wonder if you think about me too. I know you can't answer me that, and that's okay. Because honestly, it's more fun having a secret, isn't it?
Great, now respond. Great. And when you're done, can you put in the chat window how challenging that felt on a scale of 1 to 10? Great. So what we're seeing is there's quite a range. Now, this is very common, that how challenging we feel an exercise is will depend on, what it stirs up in us, the countertransference, experiential avoidance, whatever you want to call it. So there's no right or wrong answer for this. But what you're doing is you're helping the trainees build what we call self-reflective capacity regarding their own growth edges in therapy. So when this actually happens with a client in real therapy, they are a little more prepared. Hey, so Jim said 3 difficulty, but he saw this video in a previous training, so it seems like it got easier for him, maybe because of the practice. That's the goal. Great. Any other questions, comments? Oh, we want to go back to the slide. So
yeah.
Here, let me stop here. I'm going to go back to the other slide, and please just, if you have questions, type them in the. Great. So here is, Alex, do you see that? The recommended format? Okay, great.
Yep.
So here's how we recommend using these exercises. We recommend spending 10 to 20 minutes doing them in class, and trainees can just look at their laptop or their phone or whatever and do it, individually that way. You could also go around in a circle if you want everyone to kind of share their responses, or dyads, they could give each other feedback. We then recommend leaving 10 to 20 minutes for discussion. Typically, the exercises will stir up a bunch of questions about psychotherapy theory or research or, whatever. And these are typically really good questions. What we don't want are the questions to interfere with the rehearsal time. So as people have questions during rehearsal, I would ask them to write them down and then save it for the discussion portion. Otherwise, the rehearsal can just quickly drift into just more talking about therapy rather than rehearsing it. And then we recommend assigning the same exercises as homework for the trainees to do for maybe 20 minutes before the next class. And they do just the exact same thing, right? And as they do the exercises, they complete the reaction form, and then they fill out what's called the DP, Deliberate Practice Diary. And this is linked on that page I showed you, so they can download it. The diary will help build their self-reflective skills. And if they turn the diary into you, it'll also help you get a sense of how people are doing. It's fairly common that out of a class of 10 trainees, 3 will find the exercise easy, 4 will find it challenging, and 3 will find it like almost too challenging. So it's really good for you to kind of, zone in on each person's individual skill threshold. Again, something to emphasize with the trainees is to let them know that they don't have to share any details of their inner world that they don't feel comfortable sharing. That's not necessary, right? We want to protect their boundaries. Now, as an optional variation of the exercise, like I mentioned earlier, the trainees can record video of them responding, like on their phone, and then send that to you so you can get a sense of how they're doing. Any other questions, comments? Alex, was there anything I left out there?
I don't think so. I think we just want to highlight that, of course, these are also English resources, but if you want to help create more resources for an archive of multicultural prompts or stimuli, we're very happy to collaborate. So we had people yesterday from Russia, Italy, and a few other places in Asia, I think, that were asking about creating stimuli, and that's a dream come true. We definitely want to make that happen.
Yeah, if you want to translate the stimuli videos, you can record your own audio translation to go over the video. You could create your own video, just, you know, with your trainees or colleagues, and we'd be very happy to host them. And if you do that, don't feel that you have to stick to the exact script, because we want them to be kind of culturally congruent. You know, the way that clients are going to express different things is going to be different in different countries. So do it in a way that feels right for your culture, your location, and we'll host it.
We have a good question here, Tony, if you want to address from Shital Chopra.
Yeah, so do you recommend deliberate practice trainees saying out loud their responses to the videos in group supervision? Yeah, so the way to do this in group supervision is for people to take turns one after another around, you know, in a circle. And as long as you emphasize that there's no like one, you know, perfect response, that people are exploring different responses, you can then give feedback and they can learn from each other. That can be a really valuable way of learning. One thing about supervision, however, is that, you know, there's a lot of things a supervisor has to take, you know, has to address besides skill acquisition. They have to kind of review often many cases of their supervisees. They have to address ethical issues. They have to review notes. They got to help with trainees' professional development, like maybe writing recommendation letters.
Trainee anxiety attacks.
Training anxiety attacks, all kinds of things. And those are all really, really important, right? So we don't want to take those away from trainees. Thus, we found, you know, typically in supervision, if you can just carve out 10 or 20 minutes for deliberate practice, like out of the hour, like that's good. So don't try to take the whole hour or else you won't be able to do all the other things. Ideally, we'd end up in a situation where there's a supervision hour and then a separate coaching hour where they can just focus on skill rehearsal. Though the logistics of that can be challenging.
Another reason for that, just to piggyback on what Tony is saying, is that if that division is not somewhat clear, what happens is that one spills over to the other. So for example, as you're doing the deliberate practice piece, it's very easy to start talking about theory, and all of a sudden there's no rehearsal, behavior rehearsal goes out the window, and you're talking about the clients and theory and research, and the time for actual rehearsal minimizes, right? So having that clear boundary kind of helps us like stay on target with the practice. We also have a nice question here on.
Yeah, there's a great question from Hannah. Hi, Hannah. So Hannah was at the NASPER webinar right before this, great. And Jesse Owen was talking about, we've got a forthcoming book that Jesse Owen is the lead author on for using deliberate practice to enhance multicultural orientation in therapy. And we've had a lot of requests for this. This is, there's a lot of demand for this. And so that book is in development. We're expecting it by the end of 2021. We've got a side project going on where hopefully we can get some multicultural deliberate practice exercises earlier than that, because I know there's a lot of people that want them like right now. So yeah, if you're interested in creating deliberate practice exercises for things like multicultural counseling or other topics, please contact us. We are happy to help you create deliberate practice exercises. We're happy to host them. The only condition we have is everything we host has to be free of charge and kind of open source for people to kind of do what they want with. It's effectively on YouTube, so it's just available for everyone. And we want it to be accessible and helpful for beginning trainees. So we're not doing the exercises for like super advanced therapists. So I mean, that's great to do. We encourage you to do it. We're just focusing on beginning trainees ourselves. So thank you, Hannah, for that. Fabio said, I wonder what it's like to have a local virtual group so we can practice DP skills. Yeah, so having your own deliberate practice group is kind of like a consultation group is a great idea. where you can go around and do skill rehearsal together. Now, if you have a group, one thing you can do is one person can bring a challenging therapy case to the group, and then other people in the group can role play the client. So that then lets you kind of try, experiment different interventions, right? Hi, Kitty. So you can get a lot of good rehearsal that way. That's a great thing to do. Selena says, think of researching, integrating DP, multicultural competency, humility. Yes, Selena, that's a great idea. What we definitely need more research into deliberate practice. There has been some preliminary research. It's very promising. It's summarized at the end of the slides, but it's still a very, very, very preliminary stage. And we need research to find out what are the best things to practice, what is the best method of practicing, how should we assess outcomes of practice, like the whole gamut. So we really encourage that.
You have two great other questions, Neha. So you're asking about finding yourself able to maintain the steady pressures to client statements. However, during reviewing my actual videos, I repeatedly find that after a few exchanges, I lose the ability to maintain the steady pressure and start cognizing with them. How can I work at this better? So this reminds me, on my parallel life when I was practicing wind instruments, like for example, saxophone. Because it's very physical, you can do it for a little bit, but at first you can kind of only take air out of the instrument for the first 30 seconds. And without sounding too simplistic, the idea here would be to actually practice and steadily be able to increase your own affect tolerance and your own capacity in doing that skill that you want to do. And you reliably be able to do it more and more the more you practice. Now, if you're finding it hard to, for example, do a steady pressure for 10 minutes, then we would suggest that you actually try doing it with your own videos, like actually practice it towards the client in the video, what you want to do, and just monitor how that is for you. And when do you actually, get depleted after a while, and how much can you sustain it? And try keeping like going to the gym a steady kind of practice in that. Probably what will happen is that over time, you'll be able to sustain more and more of that. So you're increasing your capacity over time. If you find yourself having other kind of intrapersonal aspects blocking your capacity to maintain that steady pressure, you can also practice on the more intrapersonal skills, and we can talk more about that and maybe in some future webinar. Tony.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I would also add that one of the advantages of skill rehearsal is because there's no actual client in front of you, there's just the video, it's an opportunity to kind of flush out messages your gut might be sending you. And if you're trying one thing again and again and again, and you find that you drift to something else, it might be that your gut is telling you that you're not doing the right thing. Right? It might be that there's signals from inside saying, oh, let's try something else. And so this is an opportunity to kind of listen to that, which can be harder to do when there's a real person in front of you being like, help me, help me, help me. So, yeah.
Wayne is asking about child. Oh, we had this yesterday as well. Yeah, that's great. We really hope to do that.
Yeah, so Selena asked if we're going to have stimuli or exercises for working with children. And yes, that would be really wonderful. And if anyone here has children that they want, that they feel comfortable recording for, stimuli, maybe I'll see if I can talk my daughter into it. Then we can do that. So I personally don't do therapy, with children. So we'd want to work with someone who really is an expert in child therapy.
And the APA book series that we're working on right now is mostly focused on adult individual therapy, but that's going to be the logical next step, branching out to other kind of clients, modalities, etc. Yeah,
it's definitely on our list. And so Fabio said, is there a way to set up a consultation group? People come to the website. I mean, it's a great idea. We could look into how we could try to facilitate that. I know we have a Facebook page, and you could always post to the Facebook page if anyone in your area is looking for a group. So, and I've seen posts on other lists. Like there was a post on the ADP listserv, and there's a post on other listservs where people are like, "Oh, I'm looking to start a deliberate practice consultation group." So you could just post to whatever model you're working in, and often people will respond. So, so we wanted to keep this to about 45 minutes or so, and I think we're a little over, so we should start wrapping up. Thank you for joining us. It's been a great group, some really good questions. If you have any other questions, please email us and join our email list. If you're not on there yet, we'll be announcing future webinars, and we're always putting new resources on the website too. So thank you again,
Thanks, everyone.
And we'll see you next time.
Yes.